What would you do if a stranger's callous act turned your world upside down, stealing away the very tool that kept your child alive? It was a bright summer morning in a quiet suburban neighborhood, where every lawn was neatly trimmed and every house told a story of family and tradition. In the midst of this calm lived Tom, the county sheriff, a man whose badge and uniform symbolized authority to all, but whose greatest strength lay in the fierce love he harbored for his daughter, Lily. Lily, just 7 years old and living with a delicate heart condition, needed her little heart monitor to survive. That monitor wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a guardian that counted each precious beat, a quiet companion that had become essential to her fragile existence. From the moment Lily was born, Tom's world revolved around her. With her late mother's memory always whispering in the background, he made it his daily mission to ensure Lily's safety. Every morning, before the day began, Tom would carefully check the beeping device, marveling at how something so small could hold so much importance. Their mornings were filled with gentle routines. Lily would choose a crayon from a box of colors, and Tom would sip his coffee slowly, watching her draw with a concentration that belied her tender age. Their home was filled with the soft hum of the heart monitor, a sound that to Tom represented hope, love, and an unwavering promise to protect his little girl. But while Tom's life was dictated by love and careful vigilance, the neighborhood had recently been introduced to a new kind of order. Enter Karen, a newly arrived member of the Homeowners Association known throughout the community for her strict adherence to rules, no matter how trivial they might seem. Karen's reputation was built on her unwavering belief that every tiny aspect of neighborhood life must conform to an idealized standard of perfection. To her, order was paramount, and any deviation was simply unacceptable. The first hints of trouble came on an ordinary afternoon when the sun was high and cheerful. Lily had chosen that day to sit on the porch with her favorite coloring book and the ever-present heart monitor resting beside her. The sound it made was as familiar as her laughter, blending with the chirping of nearby birds. In her innocence, Lily would sometimes call the device a little friend that made sure her heart was always beating just right. She would giggle and pat it as if it were alive, a gesture that warmed Tom's heart whenever he thought about it. As fate would have it, Karen was making her usual rounds. With a clipboard firmly in hand and a gaze that missed nothing, she walked the street with an air of authority. When she came upon Lily's porch, her eyes immediately landed on the small heart monitor lying innocently on the table. To Karen's rigid mind, it was an unsightly object, a piece of clutter that had no place in a picture-perfect neighborhood. Without a hint of hesitation or any attempt at understanding what that device meant to the little girl, Karen strode up the steps. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice carrying an icy certainty. Lily, who had been quietly doodling, looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "It's my heart thing," she murmured, unsure of what was about to unfold. But Karen's mind was already made up. In her pursuit of maintaining strict community standards, she saw a perfect opportunity to enforce her rules. In one swift, thoughtless motion, Karen snatched the heart monitor from its delicate perch. In that brief moment, time seemed to shatter. Lily's eyes widened in terror as she reached out, her small hands grasping at something that kept her alive. The monitor, suddenly removed from its familiar spot, left Lily gasping, her breath faltering as she started to collapse. Around her, the peaceful hum of the day was replaced by a tense silence, broken only by the sound of her shallow, desperate breaths. It was just then that Tom, who had been out on a routine patrol, returned home earlier than expected. His day had started like any other, his heart set solely on returning to his daughter's safe side. But the scene that unfolded on the porch froze him in his tracks. There was Lily, small and vulnerable on the ground, her eyes pleading as she struggled to get enough air. And standing a few feet away was Karen, still clutching the monitor as if it were an insignia of her authority. The shock of betrayal ignited a fierce fire in Tom. Dropping his keys onto the porch, he rushed to his daughter's side, his uniform still crisp but his heart anything but steady. "Lily!" he cried out, his voice a mix of desperation and controlled rage, as he knelt beside her, cradling her in his arms, The realization of how close he had come to losing her pierced him like 1,000 needles. His mind raced with a single overwhelming thought. What had driven a neighbor to commit an act so reckless, so devoid of compassion? "Give it back," Lily managed to whisper between labored breaths, her small hand reaching out for the monitor that had been her lifeline. Yet even as Tom cradled her, Karen stood at a distance, her expression one of cold indifference. When Tom looked up and locked eyes with her, her smirk faltered slightly, but not enough to suggest any real remorse. The confrontation that followed was as emotional as it was explosive, with every word heavy with raw emotion and the weight of authority failing him in that moment of personal crisis. Tom reminded Karen, "I'm the county sheriff, but right now, I'm just a father fighting for his daughter's life." His words, though calm, were like a thunderclap that silenced the murmuring crowd of neighbors who had begun to gather. Their eyes darted between the two figures, a hardened enforcer of petty rules and a man whose entire world was crumbling before him. In that charged moment, as sirens echoed in the distance, signaling the arrival of paramedics, the true essence of the community revealed itself. Neighbors who had once whispered behind closed doors and exchanged perfunctory greetings now stood rooted in shock. Some covered their mouths in disbelief. Others stared with a mixture of pity and horror, witnessing the heartbreaking intersection of cold regulation and raw human emotion. The paramedics worked swiftly. With practiced efficiency, they soothed Lily, reconnecting her to a replacement monitor and administering the urgent care she so desperately needed. As the devices buzzed back to life and her labored breaths began to steady, Tom's world oscillated between a restrained relief and the searing anger he felt towards Karen. It wasn't just about a piece of equipment. It was about a violation of trust, a moment where blind adherence to rules nearly cost a little girl everything. As the situation slowly de-escalated, Karen's veneer of authority began to crumble. The realization of what her actions had nearly caused dawned upon her, leaving her standing isolated in a pool of her own regret. At one point, Tom leaned in close, his voice softening just enough to make her hear his whispered question. "What if it was your child?" Those words, simple yet devastatingly honest, pierced through the stoic mask she had worn. In that moment, the strength of community support and the profound weight of parental love intertwined, forcing her to confront the harsh consequences of her choices. The aftermath was a period of quiet reckoning. Lily, though weakened and shaken, fought her way to recovery. In the hospital, as beeping monitors filled the room with a steady reminder of how fragile life was, Tom remained by her side. The incident had not only left scars on his heart but had also reshaped his perspective on what it meant to be a protector. He began to understand that true strength wasn't in the enforcement of rules or in the display of a shiny badge. It was in the tender resilience of the human spirit and the unwavering bond of love. Neighbors slowly returned to their routines, yet a palpable change hung in the air. The events of that fateful day had stirred something within the community. Conversations that were once centered on trivial neighborhood matters now veered towards discussions of empathy and accountability. Some families, affected by the incident, found themselves reaching out to one another, offering small tokens of support, a visit, a homemade meal, or simply a listening ear. Even the local businesses began to rally around Tom and Lily, sending notes of encouragement and gestures of kindness that served as gentle reminders of the neighborhood's collective heart. For Karen, life took a different turn. The guilt of what she had done lingered, a constant reminder of a day when rules eclipsed humanity. The neat and orderly facade of her existence began to crack, and whispers among the neighbors turned into outright support for the family she had wronged. Karen's once pristine reputation was now tarnished, and she found herself retreating from the community that had once welcomed her. In the quiet moments of reflection, she too began to learn a painful lesson, that compassion could never be compromised in the name of order. Over time, as Lily's health improved and the steady rhythm of her new heart monitor became a comforting constant in their home, Tom sat with his daughter during quiet evenings, reading stories of brave knights and gentle giants. In those moments, the darkness of that terrifying day began to fade, replaced by a resilient light that only the deepest bonds of love could foster. He would often pause, looking at Lily's peaceful face, and silently vow that he would never again allow a blind enforcement of rules to overshadow the true essence of family and care. In recounting this ordeal to friends and community members, Tom's story became a powerful testament, a reminder that while rules and regulations may maintain order, they are not a substitute for the empathy and consideration that keep us truly human. His experience resonated with many, inspiring discussions about the balance between maintaining standards and preserving humanity. The neighborhood, once under the shadow of strict enforcement, slowly transformed into a place where voices began to value genuine care over cold regulation. And so, as twilight turned the skies a soft shade of blue, Tom would sit on the back porch with Lily cradled in his arms, the steady beep of her heart monitor a comforting cadence in the background. He would reflect on the day when a single action had nearly shattered their world. A day that redefined what it meant to be a guardian, a parent, and a community member. In that gentle silence, the lessons of love, responsibility, and forgiveness lived on, echoing softly with every heartbeat and every whispered promise of a safer tomorrow. This story, rooted in heartbreak and redemption, serves as a powerful reminder. In the fight between unyielding rules and compassionate care, it is love that ultimately prevails. It is a call to every member of our community to look beyond the veneer of authority and remember that behind every rule, there exists a human story, fragile, precious, and worth protecting.